Today is a big day for me because I'm at home, surrounded by walls full of memories. Jack is here too, looking so proud and happy. He's exploring the rooms with excitement, and I can't help but feel his energy rubbing off on me. We're in the main part of my family's house, the place where my dad's dreams came true. My dad worked really hard to make this place amazing, and now it's worth a whopping $100 million. It's like his legacy, something he left behind for me when he passed away. Now, without my dad by my side, my husband wants a piece of our family's legacy. He insists that what used to be mine alone should now belong to both of us. But I know better. I have proof. Papers with my name, Sarah, as the rightful owner. At 42, I work in the digital world, thanks to my job at an online bank. This career wasn't just a whim, it was shaped by the values my parents taught me about money management. They showed me how important it is to be responsible with finances, lessons I still carry with me today. Growing up with money, my parents taught me to respect it and not take it for granted. Despite our wealth, they made sure I didn't grow up spoiled. My allowance was just like everyone else's, and we didn't eat fancy meals all the time. I went to a regular public school, not some fancy private one. But somehow, rumors about us being super rich spread anyway. People thought my life was all about luxury and fun because of our big house and money. Sarah, with your huge house and all your money, life must be easy, right? You must have all the cool gadgets and games. Can we come over and play? People often asked me these questions, thinking I had everything. But the truth was, my life wasn't as extravagant as they thought. I didn't have the newest toys or gaming consoles, but people still assumed I did. Sometimes it felt like everyone just wanted to be my friend because of my family's money. Sarah, you're rich, right? Can you lend me some money? People asking for money always made me uneasy. It felt like they didn't understand the values my parents taught me. Then, I got into a tough spot when I accidentally broke Maria's gaming console. I didn't have any money at that moment, which made things even worse. Around the same time, Julie and I became classmates. She asked if I had told my parents about the accident, but I was too scared of disappointing them to say anything. I can't tell them. They might get mad. That's why I'm asking you, Sarah, she confessed. Saying no felt awful, especially since I didn't want things to be awkward at school. But my parents were clear about not lending money, so I had to apologize to Julie and explain that I couldn't help. After I couldn't help Julie, she ended up crying. And soon rumors started flying around. People accused me of not helping a friend in need, even though my family was well off. I tried to explain that I didn't have any money to spare, but it didn't seem to matter. Then, Maria said something that really hurt. She suggested that I cared more about money than friendship. Things got worse when Maria and Julie started spreading lies, saying I owed them money and refused to pay for the broken console. The school found out the truth eventually and scolded Maria and Julie. But instead of stopping, the rumors got worse and even reached my parents. My dad decided to deal with it and organized a meeting with their families. Even though they said sorry, I decided to stay away from Maria and Julie after that. I still had to deal with their looks and whispers, but at least there were no more direct confrontations. During dinner that night, my dad shared advice that stuck with me for years. He said it's important to stand by your decisions, especially when it comes to money. Sarah, it's okay to say no, he said with a smile. You don't have to tell anyone about your finances. If someone keeps asking, just say you'll have to check with your parents, even if you know you can't lend money. This lesson about handling money matters gracefully and firmly became really important to me. As I grew up, I became more careful about who I let into my life, focusing on friendships based on character, not money. After university, I made sure to keep my work and personal life separate, avoiding any financial complications. This whole experience taught me the importance of setting boundaries in both friendships and finances, and it's shaped who I am today. When I was 35, I met Jack through a friend, and despite him being a bit younger, his genuine personality quickly won me over. We started casually dating, and before long, it turned into something serious. 2 years later, we had a beautiful wedding, which made my parents really happy. After we'd been married for about a month, my dad suggested that Jack come over to our house. I trusted Jack, but I was worried that he might accidentally reveal some private family stuff because he loves to talk. Still, after a month of marriage, I felt ready to let him in on everything about my family. So I invited him to visit my parents' house. Jack was amazed when he saw my family's house. His surprise was obvious, showing that he hadn't realized how well off my family was. Even though the visit went well, Jack couldn't stop asking about our money on the way home. I didn't know much about our finances myself, so his questions made me feel uneasy. A few months after we got married, my mom called to tell me that my dad was in the hospital. It was a shock, especially since I didn't know he was having health problems. Thinking back to our last visit, I remembered how he didn't seem well, and now I felt really worried and guilty. When I went to the hospital with my mom that Saturday, my dad tried to stay cheerful, but we could tell he was feeling down. He apologized for what he saw as a burden to us, showing his gentle nature. Then the doctors told us he had advanced pancreatic cancer, and it had spread too much for surgery. It was like a punch to the gut. We couldn't believe someone as health-conscious as my dad could get so sick. After the diagnosis, my dad stayed strong. He just wanted us to be happy, which made us all tear up. I wanted to spend every moment with him, but hospital rules meant only close family could visit. He wished for our friends to be around to make happy memories at home, which reminded us of the life he wanted for us. So I promised to keep our home full of joy, even after he was gone. Keeping that promise became really important to me. I decided to renovate our family home, something to focus on during such a tough time. Jack, always caring, worried about how much I was doing for my dad, not realizing the other stuff I was dealing with, like our family's estate issues that I hadn't told him about. When Jack asked about my dad's health, I finally opened up to him about everything we were going through. It was a relief to have the support while juggling work, hospital visits, and all the emotions. However, things got tense when Jack started asking about my dad's money and the family estate. He even suggested getting legal advice, just in case something happened to my mom too. It brought up painful memories for me. My dad had a lawyer he trusted, but Jack's insistence on being cautious with money started causing problems between us. A few months later, my dad passed away after bravely battling his illness. Then, the discussions about inheritance started within the family. I ended up getting a big house worth $5.5 million. But Jack's growing interest in the inheritance, despite me trying to keep him out of it, made things even harder. He was excited about moving into the mansion and kept asking about financial stuff, which caught me off guard. I later found out he'd been talking to my cousin at the funeral, who mentioned how the house would be a waste if it stayed empty. That just made things more complicated. Despite my attempts to explain to Jack that the inheritance wasn't something we shared, he didn't seem to listen. Our relationship started getting more hostile because of it. Even though he was there at my dad's funeral, Jack didn't help out with the memorial services or the legal stuff that followed. As things started to settle down and life went on, Jack dropped a bombshell. He said he changed the ownership of my family home to his name, and he had legal papers to prove it. I was shocked and hurt. Not only did he break my trust, but it also showed a huge lack of respect for our relationship and the boundaries we had. Dealing with inheritance issues brought up bigger problems in our marriage. We had to rethink what we valued, how much we trusted each other, and where our relationship was headed. When Jack told me he changed the ownership of our family home without telling me, I was shocked and hurt. He said he was tired of our marriage and suggested we live together as roommates in the house, with him not giving me much financial support. He even threatened divorce if I didn't agree, which was a lot to take in on top of everything else. I begged him to think about what he was doing and why he made such a big decision without talking to me. He said he'd talked to a lawyer about changing the ownership without my permission. Things got so bad that divorce seemed like the only way out. I was heartbroken and lost, feeling like I had to distance myself from the home and life I'd shared with Jack. I couldn't understand why he'd do something like this, and it felt like money had changed and for the worse. The next day, Jack demanded the house keys, saying the house was his now. This just made things worse. He tried to get into the house, but security stopped him. I showed them the real ownership papers, proving the house was mine because of my dad. Seeing the proof, Jack was shocked. He trusted a guy named Jerry to help him with legal stuff, and Jerry had lied to him. Jack had even given Jerry $360,000 to change the ownership, but it turned out to be a scam. Jack was really upset. He kept trying to call Jerry, but Jerry wouldn't answer. Jack was mad at him for tricking him and taking his money. Then he turned his anger on me, saying I spent too much money on things he thought were unnecessary. He even questioned if I understood how inheritance stuff worked. Even though Jack tried to fix things and suggested we give our marriage another chance, the trust between us was too broken. I asked the security guard to help him leave, closing a painful chapter of my life. In the months that followed, I had time to think about everything that happened. It made me realize how important trust and honesty are in a relationship. What happened with Jack, all the lies and betrayal, taught me to be careful not to let money cloud my judgment. During my dad's first memorial service at our family temple, Jack showed up unexpectedly. Since our divorce, things hadn't been going well for him. He didn't have a job, he had money problems, and it seemed like the people he trusted had let him down. He looked really sad and lost, standing there in contrast to the solemn occasion. As he tearfully tried to apologize, his actions unintentionally disrupted the memorial, causing a commotion among my relatives. Despite his emotional distress, I had to ask him to leave, and security had to step in to make sure it happened. It was a difficult moment, especially during such a solemn occasion, leaving me with mixed emotions, but also a strong desire to move forward and leave our past behind. I decided it was time to leave my parents' home, something I'd been planning for a while. I found a new place to live, cutting ties with Jack for good. Meanwhile, Jack kept coming to the family property, which we had turned into a rental villa. My mom and I ran the villa together, turning it into a happy place for many people to visit and enjoy. On his side, Jack seemed to be trying to make positive changes. He got a new job and was really focused on starting over. Turning our family home into a rental villa not only honored my dad's vision, but also created a welcoming place for guests from all walks of life. The villa, known for its stunning views and beautiful garden, became really popular. We hosted all sorts of events there, from small weddings to big family parties. Working on it with my mom brought us even closer and made us really happy. As the villa became more successful, we decided to add more stuff to make it even better. We put in a swimming pool, a cozy outdoor lounge, and a fun area for kids to play. We were really committed to making sure our guests had an amazing time, and it paid off. The villa became a top spot for people looking for a peaceful getaway and unforgettable experiences. This whole project wasn't just about making money. It was about making my dad's dream come true and creating special memories for our guests. Taking care of the villa's garden filled me with a deep sense of happiness. Seeing our family home turned into a place where people could come together, have fun, and make lasting memories made me really proud. I could almost imagine my father looking down with pride at what we had accomplished, bringing his dream to life. This venture not only fulfilled his vision but also gave us financial stability and a sense of freedom. Along the way, I learned important lessons about trust, money, and the strength needed to forge my own path, separate from the challenges of the past. In this journey of self-discovery, I discovered that facing difficulties can actually make you stronger and more determined. I heard news about Jack from friends, and it seemed like he was turning his life around, finding a meaningful job and learning from his mistakes. Seeing his progress gave me a sense of peace, knowing that both of us were moving forward and growing. My father's dream became a driving force for growth, not just for me and my mom, but for everyone who visited the rental villa. It became a place of joy and celebration, a sanctuary where people could create lasting memories. The success of the villa is a testament to my father's vision, reminding us of the values of resilience and hard work. Through this venture, we've created more than just a place to stay. It's a source of happiness, a place for making memories, and proof that dreaming big and putting in the effort can lead to incredible things.
Charles, are you done moving yet? My father-in-law grumbles, not bothering to look at me but clearly directing his question at me. He always talks like he's the only one that matters. I've put up with it until now, but I can't anymore. I stop wiping the table and give Charles a hard stare, even though he's not looking at me. I'll be out today, I reply. Charles smirks, satisfied. You've just been a leech in garbage. I'll feel so much better when you're gone. He probably thinks, oblivious to how much his lifestyle has changed. My name's Grace. I turned 40 this year. I'm married to William and currently staying with my in-laws. It's been a few years since we got married, but we don't have kids. We don't plan on having any, and we can anyway. I found out shortly after we got married. I met William at a party, and honestly, if I'd known about his infertility from the beginning, I might not have married him. he told me on our wedding day. It felt like my world crashed down on me. We had dreams of a bright future together, imagining ourselves with perhaps 2 kids and discussing potential names for them. William even joined in on picking out names for our future children. But it was all a deception, or maybe not entirely a deception. Maybe William did desire children and thought about names, despite knowing he couldn't have them. Wasn't that the ultimate betrayal? I married him with the belief that we would create a happy family together, only to be completely deceived by William, whom I trusted implicitly. While some might have immediately filed for divorce upon discovering such a truth, divorce isn't a straightforward option for me. I had already committed to building a family with my in-laws, who are the only ones we can truly call parents. I couldn't just announce to them the day after becoming a family that we were getting divorced. Living with the in-laws meant facing the inevitable question of when we would start a family. So we decided to break the news to them right away. Naturally, we didn't blame William. Instead, we attributed our childlessness to a medical issue on my end. When they found out we couldn't have children, my in-laws were livid. "A worthless woman who can't bear children should leave this house immediately," declared my father-in-law Charles, who then began treating me like a servant. From the moment I arrived, I was never treated with respect, always made to feel inferior. I ate alone in the kitchen, cleaning up after the in-laws and William finished their meals. Despite my efforts in the kitchen, I only received scraps. My weight plummeted, and within 6 months of marriage, my wrists were protruding. Previously, it was my mother-in-law Madison who bore the brunt of Charles' anger. But once I joined the family, his focus shifted to me. William noticed Madison's newfound relief. "Mom seems happier lately," he remarked, attributing it to her no longer being the target. Although she never smiled around Charles, I noticed her smiling more when talking to William. Charles's tyranny extended beyond verbal abuse. Once he learned we couldn't have children, he ordered me to work tirelessly from dawn to dusk. "Since you're not fulfilling your role as a woman, at least be useful around the house," he demanded. I had always intended to work after marriage and was eager to leave the house as soon as possible. Balancing chores, work, and arriving home before everyone else was challenging, but having a job with flexible hours helped. However, even when I returned early and completed chores, I never ate with the family or received praise for my cooking. Charles, in particular, often discarded my food without tasting it, deeming it unworthy. Neither William nor Madison ever objected or offered any support. Despite my protests from the kitchen, meal times were usually silent affairs. I couldn't help but wonder if they truly enjoyed eating in such silence. But I can only observe them silently. I had no other option but to get along with my in-laws. I pretended to be friendly and played the role of a devoted wife. I couldn't pinpoint the purpose of it all, but as someone without parents, divorce seemed like an unbearable burden. Then Charles demanded that I hand over all my earnings for the household expenses. I had intended to contribute a portion of my salary, but Charles insisted on all of it, which seemed like an unreasonable demand. What's the point of working if I have no control over my own money? But speaking up was not allowed. Charles's decisions were final, and challenging him wouldn't change anything. It was easier to comply, keeping Charles in a good mood and avoiding the sorrowful looks from Madison and William. Ultimately, the main source of trouble in this marriage was Charles. Madison and William were not as much of a problem. It was Charles who oppressed and tormented me. It appeared that Madison used to handle the household finances, but it became my responsibility after marriage. "Charles, isn't this too much for Grace?" Madison dared to question. "Shut up," Charles dismissed me in his eyes. Madison and I were treated similarly. As women, our opinions were deemed worthless and not welcomed. I took over the household budget from Madison. When I first saw it, I was shocked, but after several years, I grew accustomed to it. Perhaps because there was another source of income, Charles started spending more extravagantly than before. "It's for work," he claimed, increasing his nights out. And the three of them, excluding me, began taking trips during long weekends. They never used to act like this, but suddenly everything changed. He still doesn't see me as part of the family, often referring to me as a burden or worthless. To him, I'm just a maid who doesn't cost anything. In my 20s and 30s, I could brush it off, sometimes even finding peace when Charles wasn't around. But as I neared 40, I couldn't stand his mistreatment any longer. It felt foolish and exhausting to listen to him and obey silently. I grew tired of being afraid of Charles and started standing up for myself. He didn't take kindly to that and gradually grew to resent me. This negative cycle continued to worsen, and recently, my relationship with Charles had deteriorated to the point where we hardly spoke. When he did speak, it was only to insult me. I would fire back, making the atmosphere at home unbearable. It had gotten so bad that he would demand I leave the house. But I refused to go quietly. "Where do you expect me to go, knowing I have no family?" I would retort every time. Charles would angrily slam his glass on the table, breaking so many that I lost count. "Why should I have to deal with this? A woman like you shouldn't talk back." Madison and William would quickly exit the room, sensing another argument brewing. Once it reached this point, it became Charles' one-man show. "You should be grateful to even be allowed in this house. Don't get too cocky, you leech," he would rant, his face turning red with anger. "We've had this conversation 100 times," I sighed, tired of being yelled at. Normally, I would cave in and apologize. "I'm sorry," was my usual response, but that day was different. "You need to watch what you say, Charles. You're not getting any younger. It's time to calm down." I snapped back sharply, feeling just as irritable. Charles, caught off guard by my defiance, was furious. "Who do you think you're talking to? I am the head of this household. A wife like you shouldn't have opinions," he barked. I knew I had crossed a line, but I couldn't stop myself. "I've been your wife for years. Isn't it time I'm treated like a human being? You're retired now, with less income. It seems the tables are turning." I continued, unable to contain my pent-up frustration. I confronted Charles directly, and he responded by grabbing me by the collar. "I don't need someone like you in my house. I don't want to see your face anymore. Pack your things and leave immediately." He yelled so loudly that the furniture shook. Though I should have apologized right then, I couldn't hold back any longer. "Fine, you want me to leave? That's what will make you happy, isn't it, Charles?" I challenged him, meeting his gaze defiantly. "Yes," he spat out. Unable to remain silent any longer, I declared, "Then I'll do it." He stormed off to his room with a loud noise, and I, feeling somewhat calmer, began cleaning the living room, which Charles had left in disarray. Madison came to check on me with a worried expression, but left without saying anything, returning to her own room. I realized I had no place in this house anymore. Neither William nor Madison would stand up for me. Years of enduring mistreatment had finally erupted, leaving me feeling more isolated than ever. The next morning, I followed my usual routine, waking up early to start my day. Charles emerged from his room and entered the living room, settling onto the sofa with a newspaper, paying me no mind. Without even glancing up, he casually asked, "Have you finished moving yet?" It was impossible for me to have relocated so swiftly after the events of yesterday. I assumed it was merely a drunken outburst, not a serious demand. Surely he was referring to leaving the house, right? "When do you plan on departing? You no longer have the right to reside here," Charles continued, still not meeting my gaze. Halting my task, I turned to face him directly. If he truly intends for me to leave, then I must respond seriously. "I'll be gone by today," I declared firmly. Nearby, Madison, frozen with concern, cast a worried glance in my direction. It was evident that once I departed, Charles would refocus his animosity towards her, and she didn't want me to leave. However, Charles had made up his mind. Apologizing and staying was never an option. With a satisfied laugh from Charles echoing behind me, I hurriedly gathered my belongings and left the in-laws' home. Uncertain of my destination, I felt a sense of liberation. I sent a message to William, who was already away. "Please proceed with the divorce proceedings." A lawyer would reach out to him. With that, I powered off my phone. In the following days, I engaged a lawyer who reached out to William and the in-laws. Charles, convinced that divorce was inevitable, pressured William to swiftly sign the papers. William hesitated, glancing back and forth between me and the divorce documents. But there was no room for second thoughts. With Charles's insistence and my determination to move forward, he reluctantly complied. I have no money to spare for a woman like you, but dealing with lawyers is a nuisance, so I'll foot the bill, Charles grumbled, his arrogance palpable. The lawyer offered a wry smile at his demeanor. Despite his reluctance, William signed the agreement under Charles's stern gaze. In the presence of the lawyer, I added my signature, and the divorce was finalized. We settled the distribution of assets, and I received compensation for the harassment I had documented. It proved wise to invest in legal support rather than navigate the process alone. Concerned about his reputation, Charles opted to avoid complications by involving lawyers. As the manager of household finances, I was privy to Charles's financial situation, allowing me to propose a settlement within his means. With the property division and harassment compensation settled, I embarked on a comfortable life in my own apartment. While solitude was once daunting, my time living with the in-laws and going through a divorce taught me to appreciate the tranquility of my own space. I relished preparing meals for myself, reveling in the peace of not having anyone to answer to. One day, roughly 3 months post-divorce, Charles's incessant calls flood my phone. Assuming it's nothing positive, I ignore them, but his persistence forces me to accidentally answer. "What have you done to my house?" His voice reverberates loudly, even without the speaker mode. Instinctively, I pull the phone away from my ear. "I haven't done anything. I simply left the house, as you've instructed." I reply defensively. Unsatisfied with my response, Charles continues to berate me. "How can you claim you've done nothing? I'm receiving notifications about withdrawal issues since you left." Ah, so he's upset about the withdrawal problems and blames me. "I don't know. I didn't take any action. I managed everything according to your directives and paid all dues." I respond, a sense of satisfaction creeping in as I understand why Charles is upset. I suppress a grin, relieved he can't see my reaction. "That's absurd. Before you arrived, we managed fine with mine, Madison's, and William's incomes. How much were you earning anyway?" I recall that I never disclosed my salary details to Charles. $45,000 take home, I reveal. Charles emits a noise akin to a squashed frog before falling silent. In reality, my job in sales at an investment trust firm primarily consisted of commission-based earnings, contingent on the returns I generated for investors. However, much of it vanished due to Charles' extravagant spending. Nonetheless, I had wisely invested my inheritance, generating some additional income. It wasn't a substantial amount, but it helped cover living expenses. I relied on this income to purchase necessities, although during the property distribution, only William's savings were considered. This was because only assets acquired during our marriage were subject to distribution, excluding the inheritance from my parents and its earnings. Since I utilized all earnings for household expenses throughout the marriage, I had no savings accumulated over the years. The Charles family spent money lavishly, unaware that I was compensating for it. "You claim you managed before marriage, but was it on par with our current standard of living?" I questioned. Charles's frustration finally boiled over. "Don't jest. You should continue contributing to our household expenses. You're the one who caused this mess, so you must take responsibility," he retorted angrily. I couldn't help but chuckle at his absurd statement. I could envision Charles's face reddening as he raised his voice. "What's the matter? What are you implying? You were the one who insisted I leave, remember? I simply followed your directive. Why should I, no longer a part of the family, continue providing financial support?" I replied, half amused, before hearing a loud crash from the other end. Charles must have thrown another fit. The realization that I no longer had to clean up after him almost made me wish for more destruction. Moreover, we're strangers now. Not family, not anything. Please refrain from assuming familial obligations. Manage your own finances. I left you with enough to sustain yourself, didn't I? With that, I bid him farewell and disconnected the call. I anticipated more calls from Charles, but none came. I thought perhaps he was feeling remorseful, but it seemed that wasn't the case. Instead, it appeared he was too ashamed to admit he couldn't meet the payments. He resorted to pressuring William and Madison to borrow money from financial institutions to cover their expenses. While payments were made, it only led to accumulating debt. Refusing to adjust their lifestyle, they continued living beyond their means. Continuing like this will only lead to more debt. You need to make changes, I warned, but they persisted, unable to meet their financial obligations and sinking further into debt each month. William reached out to me, foolishly considering reconciliation and even suggesting severing ties with his father to reunite. How could he propose such a thing now, after failing to defend me against Charles's mistreatment? Despite my decision to stand by William, knowing we couldn't have children, he never protected me. His suffocation under Charles' influence is no longer my concern. I wish they would grasp the consequences of their actions and endure the repercussions. Now, the in-laws find themselves burdened by debt yet unwilling to adjust their lifestyle. Charles, now working as a contract laborer with reduced pay, and William and Madison have taken up part-time security positions. It's not just Charles. Madison and William are also guilty of refusing to downsize their living standards. Despite being stretched to their limit, they refuse to make sacrifices. I used to be consumed with protecting William, but now I prioritize my own well-being. At 40, the prospect of having children may be challenging, but I remain open to the possibility. Before the divorce, mornings felt like a burden, but now I wake up feeling rejuvenated. I eagerly anticipate a brighter future in my newfound independence.
I can still picture the day Jack strolled into my life like it was just yesterday. I was in a tiny cafe, sipping on their cheapest coffee and trying to sort out my thoughts. Then he walked in, looking like he stepped out of a movie scene. No fancy lights or music, just the jingle of the doorbell and the smell of stale coffee mingled with his aftershave. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked, flashing me a charming smile and pointing to the empty chair across from me. "Go ahead," I said, trying to play it cool despite my surprise at his sudden appearance. We hit it off right away, like two peas in a pod. We had the same interests, from binge-watching cheesy TV shows to arguing over the best pizza topping, pineapple, no doubt. Soon, we were serious about each other, not just casually hanging out. It felt like we had known each other forever. And before we knew it, marriage was on the table. But then came the tough part. Let me tell you, his parents were a handful. Meeting them for the first time was like stepping into a lion's den with a juicy steak strapped to my back. They had this way of smiling while silently judging you, deciding if you were up to par or not. "You're the one Jack can't stop talking about, huh?" his mom said, her tone more frosty than friendly. "Yep, that's me," I replied, trying my best not to let her intimidating aura get under my skin. His parents wasted no time in expressing their desire for us to sign a prenup. I wasn't interested in their money, but their approach left a sour taste in my mouth. "I'll sign your prenup," I told them. "But here's the catch. If one of us cheats, the cheater owes $200,000. Jack looked stunned, like I'd slapped him with a wet fish. "Babe, I'd never cheat on you," he insisted, his expression dead serious. "Yeah, well, my ex said the same thing before I caught him cheating," I shot back. It was either this deal or nothing. Jack eventually agreed, though his parents didn't seem too thrilled about it. We figured that settled the matter, but we were in for a surprise. One evening, we were cozied up on our old squeaky couch. We always talked about replacing it, but it held too many memories to let go. The TV droned on in the background, but we were too wrapped up in planning our dream trip to Switzerland. We knew it would stretch our budget thin, but we were determined to make it happen. Picture it, Jack. The food, the wine, the art. "We have to go," I exclaimed, excitement lighting up my eyes. Jack chuckled and pulled me closer. "Linda, you had me at food, but let's face it, Our bank account is more suited for backyard camping than a fancy trip to Geneva. I nudged him teasingly. Then we'll save up. We'll cut back on things we don't really need, like your video games. He feigned shock. Not the video games. Take my shirts, my shoes, even my beloved coffee maker, but spare the games. We shared a laugh. That was us in a nutshell, dreaming big while staying grounded in our simple life. And we were content. Our happiness didn't just lie in grand adventures, it was also in the everyday moments like Jack's attempts at cooking breakfast on Saturdays. He wasn't a culinary master, but he had somehow perfected scrambled eggs and toast, which he proudly served with his less than perfect coffee. I'm feeling scrambled eggs today. What do you think? He'd ask, already making his way to the kitchen. Only if you promise not to burn the toast this time, I'd tease back, adding, and I'm taking charge of the coffee. One day, as we tackled the dishes together, a mundane chore that felt special because we did it side by side, Jack broached a topic we'd been avoiding. Linda, we need to talk about, starting a family, he said, breaking the comfortable silence. I paused, holding a plate in my hands. I know it's just scary, isn't it? What if it doesn't happen for us? Jack turned to me, drying his hands on a towel. Then we'll face it together. But we won't know until we try, right? How hard can it be? He chuckled, a mix of nerves and affection in his tone. Famous last words, huh? But that's us. Whatever life threw at us, we tackled it together. Even when his mom started dropping hints about wanting grandchildren every chance she got, we handled it. Linda, dear, when are you going to give me some grandbabies? You're not getting any younger, she'd say, her tone sugary but her message clear as day. I'd hold my tongue, flash a smile, and chirp. We're on it, right, Jack? And he'd chime in, Mom, chill out, okay? These things don't happen overnight. But as time passed, the pressure mounted. It wasn't just from his mom, but from us too. We longed for a family, but it wasn't falling into place as easily as we'd hoped. Since Sophia found a new hobby in making my life tough, our home felt like a war zone, her sharp words the main ammo. It all boiled over during one Sunday lunch, meant to be serene and easygoing. Right on cue, Sophia barged in uninvited just as we were about to dig in. The atmosphere turned tense the moment she stepped in, her eyes scanning the room like she was inspecting a battleground. Well, isn't this a quaint little setup? She sneered, eyeing the modest meal I'd whipped up. Quite the effort, Linda. Looks like you've been slaving away in the kitchen all morning, trying to keep the peace and mustered a smile. It's nothing fancy, Sophia. Just something simple and quick. Please, take a seat. As we settled at the table, she launched into her usual spiel. Linda, Sophia began, her tone dripping with condescension. I was chatting with Mrs. Charlotte the other day, and she mentioned how her grandson just became a dad. It got me thinking, when are you and Jack going to give me some good news? Time's ticking. My cheeks flushed with a mix of embarrassment and frustration. I glanced at Jack, hoping for some backup, but he suddenly seemed very engrossed in his meal. Mom, seriously? Jack finally mumbled, but it lacked conviction, and we all knew it. Undeterred, Sophia pressed on. I hate to be blunt, but you're not getting any younger. You work hard for your money. Why waste it on Linda if she can't fulfill her basic duties as a wife? Hiring help for cleaning and cooking would be much more efficient, don't you think? That was the last straw. Sophia, I'm doing my best here, I blurted out. It's not like I don't want kids. And as for the house and cooking, I didn't realize marriage came with a job description. Sophia scoffed. Marriage isn't a free ride, Linda. You have responsibilities, and frankly, you're not meeting them. The air grew heavy with tension, and tears threatened to spill from my eyes. But what hurt the most wasn't Sophia's harsh words. It was Jack's silence. When he finally spoke, it wasn't in my defense. Mom's right, maybe we should consider getting some extra help around here. It would take some weight off your shoulders too, he suggested. His words felt like a stab in the back. It was clear I was alone in this. In the days that followed, Sophia's visits became more frequent and her criticisms sharper. She'd scrutinize every corner of the house, pointing out any flaw. You call this clean, she'd sneer. Looks like a pigsty to me. Then came the jabs about my appearance. Is that what you're wearing? A wife should dress to please her husband. No wonder Jack seems exhausted. He comes home to this. I tried to stand up for myself. Sophia, I dress for myself, not Jack. And he's tired because he works hard, not because of my outfit. But it was pointless. Sophia had made up her mind about me, and nothing I said seemed to make a difference. Jack's lack of support hit me the hardest. Every night after his mom's departure, we'd end up arguing. Why won't you defend me, Jack? She's bulldozing over us, and you're just standing by. Linda, she's set in her ways. What do you expect me to do? Kick my own mom out? No, but I expect you to be my partner, to stand with me, not her. It became evident that this went beyond Sophia's disapproval. It was about us, our marriage, and whether we could withstand the onslaught of Sophia's criticisms. As weeks passed, it dawned on me that this wasn't just a passing phase, it was a full-blown assault. If we didn't take action soon, there might not be anything left to salvage. Things between Jack and me had turned frosty ever since Sophia ramped up her criticisms. But it wasn't just our home life feeling the strain. Jack himself had started behaving oddly, and it wasn't solely because of work stress. There was something else, something unsettling. It all began with his phone. Jack used to be open about it, we had no secrets. But then he began leaving the room whenever he received a call. And it was always from the same person, Paul Work. One evening, I tried to sound nonchalant and asked, "Who's Paul Work?" Jack visibly tensed up, a clear sign of nervousness. "Oh, just a new guy at the office. Asks a lot of questions," he replied. But there were more changes. Jack, who never cared much about fashion, suddenly started paying attention to his appearance. The graphic tees and worn-out jeans disappeared, replaced by crisp shirts, slacks, and even cologne. "Since when did you start smelling like a department store?" I teased one morning, watching him style his hair differently. He just smirked. "Can't a guy mix things up every once in a while? No harm in that, right?" Then there were the late nights at work, becoming more frequent. "Another long one, babe," he texted. "Sorry, this project is a killer. I'll be home soon, I promise," he reassured. But it would be well past midnight before I heard his keys jingle in the door. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It lingered like a shadow. That's when I made the decision to hire a private investigator. It felt like a scene from a cheesy TV show, but I needed to know for certain. The evidence arrived in a plain brown envelope. Heartbreaking yet undeniable. Photos of Jack with another woman, their intimacy unmistakable, captured in moments that shattered our years together. But it was the recording that cut the deepest. Their conversations filled with affection and plans made it painfully clear. He was in love with her, or at least with someone else. I sat there, staring at the damning evidence before me, a chilling reality sinking in. This could be the key I needed if our marriage spiraled into a messy divorce. The photos captured stolen moments from our life together, while the recorded words betrayed every "I love you" he ever whispered in my ear. But I kept it all to myself, a heavy burden I chose to carry alone. I wasn't ready to confront him, not yet. I needed time to strategize, to navigate the collapse of our marriage while preserving my dignity. The days that followed passed in a blur. Jack maintained his facade, and I played the part of the dutiful wife, smiling outwardly while crumbling inside. Our conversations became a delicate dance around the truth, each word carefully chosen, every laugh forced. "Are you okay?" Jack would inquire, genuine concern lacing his voice. "Yeah, just tired, you know. Work's been hectic," I'd respond, the lie bitter on my tongue. It seemed like just another ordinary day until I accidentally overheard a conversation that would change everything. As I passed by Jack's office, the door slightly ajar, their voices drifted out. It was Jack and his mother, Sophia, and their conversation wasn't casual. Their tones were serious, filled with purpose. "I can't keep this up, Mom. It's not just about having kids anymore. I don't feel the same way about Linda. It's like we're living together as strangers, not as a married couple," Jack admitted, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Sophia's reply was cutting. "Well, can you blame yourself? She hasn't given you a child. And what else has she really brought to this marriage? But let's not be hasty. My 65th birthday is approaching, and we wouldn't want to miss out on a generous gift from her, would we?" Her cynicism felt like a stab in the heart. They were using me, planning to keep me around just long enough to benefit from a lavish birthday present before discarding me. "Exactly, dear. Just a bit longer," Sophia affirmed, her words dripping with malice. I stood there, stunned and furious. They were plotting to push me out of the family as effortlessly as crossing off an item on a shopping list. The pain ran deep, but it fueled a burning desire for vengeance within me. They thought they could manipulate me and discard me at their convenience. I was determined to prove that I wasn't just a pawn in their twisted game. A few days later, we gathered for a family dinner that felt more like a scripted performance than a meal. Sophia brought up her impending birthday with a smile that made my stomach churn. Leaning in, she asked, "So, Linda dear, what do you have planned for my birthday? Something special, I hope." I met her gaze calmly. "Actually, Sophia, I've been thinking of arranging a dinner at the city's most luxurious restaurant, an unforgettable evening." Her eyes gleamed with anticipation, and she exchanged a satisfied glance with Jack. They believed they had me cornered, but they didn't realize I was already 2 steps ahead. "Oh, Linda, that sounds lovely. Just close family, keep it intimate," Sophia cooed, her voice oozing with insincerity. "Absolutely, Sophia. We'll make it a memorable occasion," I replied, the words leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. The weeks leading up to Sophia's 65th birthday felt like a slow march towards a reckoning. Every smirk from her and every indifferent nod from Jack fueled my resolve. My plan was straightforward yet daring. Orchestrate a lavish dinner as a supposed gesture of affection, then unveil a monumental surprise. As with all well-laid plans, the devil was in the details. The night before the party, our home crackled with tension. Jack, oblivious to the storm brewing, lounged casually on the couch, absorbed in his phone. "Everything ready for tomorrow?" he inquired, still glued to the screen. "You could say that," I replied, my voice masking the turmoil within. The day arrived, and as guests streamed into the opulent dining room we had reserved for Sophia's celebration, anticipation hung heavy in the air. My pulse quickened, not from nerves, but from the excitement of what was to come. Sophia, relishing the spotlight, luxuriated in the grandeur of her surroundings. "Oh, Linda, you've truly outdone yourself. This place is divine," she proclaimed loudly enough for neighboring tables to hear. As we settled in, the evening unfolded with the peculiar cheer typical of family gatherings. Laughter rang out, stories were shared. Then, as the dessert plates were whisked away, the waiter approached with the climax of the evening. The bill. He leaned in discreetly and murmured the staggering dinner costs. $66,000. I handed over my credit card, my action going unnoticed by most. Then, with a strained smirk, Jack decided to drop his bombshell. "Linda, it's time for the truth. I'm done with this, with us. I want a divorce." His words hung heavily in the air, suffocating the room. Before I could fully process his announcement, Sophia, sharp and unyielding, interjected. "Well then, now that's out in the open, it's best you leave, Linda. Tonight is about family, and well, you're no longer part of ours." The room fell into a hushed silence, every gaze fixed on me, awaiting my response. But I refused to crumble. With a composure I didn't truly feel, I rose from my seat, nodded, and departed without a word. The chill of the night air slapped against my skin as I made my way home, the weight of finality crashing over me in waves. By the time I reached Arno's apartment, I had a plan. I gathered my essentials, my numbness morphing into steely determination. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As I sealed my last suitcase, my phone buzzed incessantly. Initially, I ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me, and Sophia's voice erupted from the other end. "Linda, the payment didn't go through. You need to fix this right away," Sophia's voice demanded. The irony was bittersweet. In my preparations, I had blocked access to the shared account, anticipating it would be Jack's first move. "Oh, Sophia, what a shame. But since I'm no longer considered part of the family, as you've made abundantly clear, I'm afraid you'll have to handle this matter on your own." Her indignation crackled through the phone, but it was a symphony to my ears. The ensuing chaos was a fitting conclusion to the charade my marriage had become. I heard tales of the restaurant staff demanding payment, Sophia's escalating fits, and eventually the police being called to defuse the situation she had incited. In the end, it was Jack and his kin who scrambled to settle the bill. A poetic retribution for the betrayal and indignity they had subjected me to. The morning after the dinner felt like emerging from a tempest. Armed with my plan, my determination, and a stack of divorce papers in hand, I returned to what once was our shared abode for the final time. The atmosphere was tense, palpable, as if it could be sliced with a blade. Jack and Sophia stood there, seemingly embroiled in a heated exchange. Their animosity toward me seemed to merge into a unified front of fury upon my arrival. "You've got some nerve showing your face here after last night," Jack spat, his features twisted in a mixture of anger and disbelief. Quick to echo his sentiment, Sophia hurled her own barbs. "Ingrate, you've brought shame upon us in front of the entire city. Do you comprehend the humiliation of having the police summoned on account of your actions?" People were laughing, filming. I met their fury with a composure I hardly felt. "Shame? Is that your primary concern right now?" I retorted, tossing the divorce papers onto the table, placing the incriminating photos of Jack's infidelity atop them. "Perhaps you should direct your attention to this instead." Jack's complexion drained of color as he picked up the damning photographs, with his mother looming over his shoulder. Their rage dissolved into shock, then morphed into panic as they comprehended the gravity of the situation. "And let's not overlook the prenup, shall we?" I pressed on, my voice unwavering. "You stray, you pay precisely $200,000. Sophia's features contorted into a snarl. "You wouldn't dare. You can't do this to us." "Oh, but I can, and I will," I retorted, my voice devoid of warmth, resolute in my decision. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Jack altered his approach. "Please, let's discuss this. We can find a solution." I couldn't suppress a bitter, mirthless laugh. "Find a solution? You think a few words can undo everything?" "No, Jack, it's over." Sophia, ever the master manipulator, attempted to soften her stance, her tone dripping with false concern. "Linda, darling, think about what you're doing. This will destroy us." "That ship has sailed, Sophia. You should have considered that before." Their pleas shifted to desperate entreaties, their words a frantic attempt to salvage whatever remained. But my mind was resolute. I was done playing the victim, done with their deceit and manipulation. In the end, Jack had no recourse but to borrow money from his parents to settle with me. As I departed from that house for the final time, check in hand, I felt a burden lift from my shoulders. After all that transpired, I was finally liberated. I used the money from Jack to secure a down payment on a modest yet snug abode of my own. It's remarkable how much tranquility you can find in a residence that's solely yours, where each nook feels like a sanctuary away from the tumult of the past. Life is calmer now, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I have a job that keeps me occupied, amiable neighbors who offer nods and smiles, and a petite garden that's entirely mine to tend to. Occasionally, I catch wind of gossip concerning Jack and Sophia. Just the other day, while grabbing coffee from the local spot frequented by the community, I bumped into an acquaintance from the old neighborhood. After some polite chit-chat, they leaned in, lowering their voice, and whispered, "Hey, have you heard the latest scoop about your ex and his mom?" Their eyes gleamed with intrigue. I arched an eyebrow, intrigued yet detached. "Can't say that I have." "Do share." They seemed to relish divulging the news. "Apparently, Sophia isn't too thrilled with Jack's new girlfriend. Rumor has it they're quarreling like there's no tomorrow." Puts your situation in a whole new light. We moved on from the topic, but as I strolled away with my coffee, I felt a profound sense of relief. There was a time when such news would have unsettled me, but now it's simply another chapter in someone else's tale. These days, my greatest worries revolve around whether my tomatoes will ripen before the squirrels snatch them, or if I'll ever master yoga without resembling a newborn deer on ice. Life is simpler, quieter, and considerably sweeter on this side of the chaos.